Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We from the group 1. On this occasion, we will do presentation about demographic and workforce. But before that, I will to introduce the member group. The first, I'm Anissa Putritami. Second, Arya Wiraja. And the last, Marleni Purnama. Our material to presentation, demographic and development of the Indonesian economy, labor force and poverty, labor and era 4.0. For the first, the material, I will explain about definition of demographic. Definition of demographic. Demographic etymologically or linguistic comes from the Latin language. The word demography consists of two words, namely demos equal population, graphian equal status. Etymologically, the meaning of the demography is a record or description of the population of an area at a certain time. While the epistemologically or based on science, the definition of demography is not as simple as in an etymological perspective. The word demography is given a more specific meaning about population. The next, this is the definition about demography, suitable expert opinion. The first, Philip M. Hauser and Dudley Duncan. Demography is the study of the size, territorial contribution, and composition of population change therein and the component of such change which may be identified as natality, territorial movement or migration, and social mobility or change of states. Second, multilingual demographic dictionary. Demography is the scientific study of human population in primarily with the respect to their size, their structure or composition, and their development chance. After that, David V. Glass, demographics are limited to studies population as a result of the influence of demographic process, namely fertility, mortality, and migration. The next definition, demography suitable present. Demographics are the study of the human population in relation to its change occur as a result of birth, death, and migration. The last expert, Donald J. Bogue. Demography is a science studied statistically and mathematically about the quantity, composition, and distribution of population and its change over time through the operation of the five demographic components, namely birth, death, marriage, migration, and social mobility. Uh, from the from that, the conclusion from the opinion of the expert, demography is the study of the population in terms of size or number, structure or composition, distribution to the room, and the factor that are affect the number, structure and distribution of the population, namely fertility, mortality, and migration in a particular area. In demographic, there are static and dynamic aspects of population. Number two, demographic and development. Demographic and development, two words that have different meanings but cannot be separated from one another. Demography refers to human, individual, person, or group of people in area certain. Development means the process of change sometime to something to be better or to make something better to be enjoyed and utilized by residents. Development is basically done with the purpose of the welfare of the population, both physical and spiritual. In development, the population becomes both the subject and the object. Population becomes a subject because the population becomes the target for which it is built. That is includes the increased abilities or empowered and increasingly widespread various opportunities or opportunities so that residents enjoy the development that has been done. As target and conscious of result development require the number, structure, and rate of population growth and its distribution to achieve equity and justice. Uh, After that, demographic transition in Indonesia. First, Indonesia demographic transition has been marked by a decline in numbers infant mortality from 140 per 1,000 live birth in 1,090 and 71 to 35 in 2000. And second, meanwhile, the fertility rate decreased from 5.6 in the years 1019 and 61 to only 2.6 in 2007. Number three, that is the number of children owned by every Indonesian woman until the end of her reproductive age dropped from about 5 to 6 children to only 2 to 3 children. While the demographic bonus, the demographic bonus is an auspicious event for every region experience this event. And two, the demographic bonus situation will change the pyramid or ratio between the population of productive age and the population of non-productive age. Number three, increased productivity means that economic growth will also increase. Do demographic factors affect Indonesian economic growth? Based on World Bank data with a sample of 43 countries, it is found that linearly the per capita GDP growth rate depending on the dependency ratio of young and old population growth rate that. This fact is supported by Wong-Bosin and Piroswet, who states the demographic factor influence economic growth by rate difference growth between developed and developing countries. In which country the economy is already advanced, it is found that an increase in the number of workers who are already experienced to have a big impact on the country's economic growth. But on the other hand, the increase in the number of the elderly population also has a negative contribution for economic growth. Vice versa, in developing countries, an increase the share of young workers affect economic growth in a slower direction. Thomas Robert Malthus in 1798 urged that if the population was not restricted, it could lead to very rapid development and consequently the fast fulfillment of the Earth's survival. The high rate of population growth was not proportional to the growth rate of food productivity. On the other hand, humans need food to live. If the population growth rate is not controlled, people will experience a shortage of foodstuff, which will result in poverty and destitution.
Okay, for the next material, I will explain about the labor force and poverty. labor force and poverty. Definition of labor force. Labor force is one part of the workforce that is basically imperfect or trying to evolve imperfect in an activity of production, goods and services. Next, understanding the labor force according to expert. Number one is BPS or Badan Pusat Statistik. The labor force is a population of working age who is working or looking for a work. The approach includes a workforce that is actively working or looking for a work in which both activity are within a certain period of time. Next, submersono. The labor force is a part of the population that is capable and willing to do the work. In this case, the definition of workforce capable means capable physically, mentally, and also legally capable. So differences is in labor force, not labor force and labor. The labor force is a population of productive age 15 until 64 years who already have a job but are temporarily not working or who are actively looking for a work. So not the labor force are those aged 10 years and over whose activities are only going to school and taking care of the household and so on. The labor is anyone who is able to work to produce goods or services so that they are able to meet the needs of themselves or the community. So how about the types of the labor force? One is maximum working. Full work is the workforce that use the maximum working hours in their work, which is 8 to 10 hours per day. So how about the half employment? Half employment are workers who use less working time, which can be seen from the from of working hours, working capability, and also their earnings. So next one is types of the labor force based on employment. Uh, Last about the workforce based on the work, and then number two is about the based on the unemployment. Labor force based on employment. Number one is seasonal unemployment. Seasonal employment is condition of employment that occurs due to change in the season. For example, farmer. Number two is cycle employment. Cycle employment is employment that occurs due the effect of fluctuating flow in the economy, which result in less demand for labor compared to request for labor. Next one is structural unemployment. Is employment caused by the change in the structure or structure of the economy. Technology employment is employment that is used in manufacturing production, which is always changing. That rate of change is getting faster and faster. Next, the last one is unemployment to lack of aggregate demand. Is the place because there is total community request based on investment activities. So next is about the number of labor force in Indonesia. The total workforce in August 2020 was 138.22 million people, an increase of 2.36 million people compared to August 2019. In line with the increase in the number of the workforce, the labor force participation rate also increased by 0.224 percentage points. So next is about the poverty. Definition of poverty is a condition when the person is unable to fulfill basic needs such as food, clothing, shelter, education, and health. Next is types of poverty. Number one is subjective poverty. For example, seasonal beggars that appear in big city. Absolute poverty, example of underprivileged family. Next, the types of poverty, relative poverty. For example, the number of employment because there are few jobs. Natural poverty, for some people on the African continent whose lands is dry and barren. Next is cultural poverty, like the Bedouin tribe who staunchly defend their costume and reject the progress of the times. Next is structural poverty, for example, for poor people who do not benefit from freeport. So, cause of poverty number one is low education level, lazy to work, poor health quality, limited field work, and price needs high. So, how about the poverty impact? Number one is increased crime, high mortality rate, close access to education, and unemployment increase. So, how about the level or distribution of poverty level in Indonesia? Sorry, the number of poverty people in Indonesia as of March 2020 was 26.42 million people or 9.78%. This figure increased from the previous year, which is amount to 9.41% or 25.40 million people. Thank you.
Okay, I will expand labor and era 4.0. According to the Big Indonesian Dictionary KBBI, workers are people who work or do something, workers, employed, or so on. Labor is any person who is capable of doing work in order to produce good or service, either to fulfill their own needs or for the community. Labor is one of the important production factors for the country. Without labor, natural production factor and the capital production factor cannot be used optimally. And Indonesia is a country that has a large population. Clarification of labor. Number one, educated workforce. Example, doctor, architect, and a teacher. Number two, skilled personnel. Example, bus driver, musician. And then uneducated workforce. Example, construction workers. Uh, Next, employment problem. Number one, low quality of labor. Number two, the number of the workforce is not proportional to job opportunities. Number three, uneven work distribution. And then unemployment.